The power you give away when you speak too soon. Imagine this. You are standing in the center of a heated argument. Voices clash like swords. Each word hurled across the room is sharpened by emotion. Each sentence a desperate attempt to win, to dominate, to be heard. Your heart is pounding. Your breath is shallow. You're already crafting your next response, not to understand, but to destroy, to prove you are right. But here's the catch. So is the other person, and neither of you is listening. Then suddenly, a quiet figure steps in. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't even try to mediate. He leans in and whispers something unsettling. You've already lost. Confused, you turn toward him. You protest, I'm standing my ground. I'm defending my truth. But he only smiles, calm and cryptic. Because in the world of Friedrich Nietzsche, the moment you engage in this kind of battle, of ego, of emotional reactivity, you have already surrendered your power. The hidden power of silence. Nietzsche believed something most people still find hard to accept. True power doesn't come from being louder or more logical. It comes from self-mastery. Modern society glorifies the loudest voice in the room. We reward debaters, influencers, speakers. But Nietzsche looked beyond words. He saw that behind most arguments lies not a search for truth, but a battle for psychological territory. Why do people argue? Because they feel attacked. Because their identity is on the line. Because their ego trembles at the thought of being wrong. When we argue, we're not defending ideas. We're defending ourselves. And in doing so, we reveal our greatest weakness, our need to react. Nietzsche called this surrender, the surrender of inner power to outer chaos, Nietzsche's Übermensch, master of the inner world. In his writings, Nietzsche introduced the concept of the Übermensch, the superior man, the one who rises above the herd, not by dominating others, but by mastering himself. The Übermensch doesn't jump into arguments to prove he's right. He chooses his battles with precision. He listens. He observes. He waits. And when he speaks, if he speaks, it changes everything. This is not passivity. This is power. Because to speak without needing to prove, to remain silent without feeling weak, to hold your ground without shouting, this is the mark of someone who is no longer a slave to their emotions. Power isn't loud. It's strategic. Let's illustrate this with three masters of silent power. 1. Socrates, winning through questions. Socrates never told people what to believe. He never argued for the sake of dominance. Instead, he asked questions, carefully, methodically, until his opponents unraveled their own contradictions. He wasn't trying to win. He was guiding people to defeat themselves. One day, a proud Athenian politician proclaimed himself the wisest man in the city. Socrates didn't call him a fool. He didn't challenge him outright. He simply asked, "What is wisdom?" And slowly, question by question, the man's proud facade crumbled. Socrates understood this. You don't defeat your opponent by attacking them. You let them expose their own weakness. 2. Steve Jobs. Controlling the narrative. Steve Jobs wasn't quiet, but he was selective. He didn't fight every battle. He let others speak, let them voice their doubts, their resistance. And then, at the right moment, he revealed a vision so compelling that they believed it was their idea all along. Jobs was not reacting. He was orchestrating. Take the design of the iPhone. Engineers insisted on buttons. Jobs saw a future without them. Instead of arguing, he let the resistance play out until he presented a concept so powerful that resistance melted. His silence wasn't absence, it was design. 3. Miyamoto Musashi, the duel before the duel. The legendary samurai Musashi won over 60 duels. But he didn't win with brute force alone. He won with psychological warfare. In one of his most famous duels, against Sasaki Kojiro, Musashi arrived hours late. Kojiro was furious, blinded by anger. And that's exactly what Musashi wanted. He stepped onto the battlefield calm, composed, and struck with precision. Kojiro, caught in the storm of his own emotions, fell. Musashi's real sword wasn't steel. It was control over the opponent's mind. Why silence wins. Silence, when used with intent, isn't retreat. It's strategy. It creates discomfort. It forces others to fill the space, often exposing their emotional instability. It transforms the dynamic of power. When you stay silent, you create tension. And in that tension, you take control. Nietzsche believed that silence, restraint, and discipline were signs of someone who had conquered himself. And when you've conquered yourself, no one else can. The psychology behind Nietzsche's truth. Modern science confirms what Nietzsche saw a century ago. Confirmation. Bias, we only hear what supports our beliefs. Backfire effect. The more we're challenged, the more we double down. Emotional triggers. We defend our beliefs not because they're true, but because they feel like part of who we are. When you argue, you're not changing minds. You're escalating defenses. But the Übermensch doesn't need validation. He doesn't need agreement. He walks through chaos untouched because he has nothing to prove. The final test. So the next time you find yourself in the fire of conflict, ask, am I reacting or am I responding? Am I trying to win or trying to understand? Do I speak because I must or because silence would cost me power? Nietzsche's ultimate lesson is not to avoid battle, but to transcend it. To know that true dominance begins not in the clash of voices, but in the stillness before the storm. Because power doesn't come from controlling others. Power comes from not being controlled. And that begins with silence.